And
So when Jamie Dimon pushes back and says, I don't like Bitcoin, I don't want to talk about crypto anymore, what's your reaction?
100 years ago, people didn't want to install electricity in their factory. 100 years ago, there were people afraid to fly, right? And so 70-year-old executives afraid to get in an airplane, and the year is 1930. What is your reaction? Okay, that's reasonable. His generation is afraid of airplanes. It's 1905, and the manufacturing magnate with steam power in the middle of the factory is afraid to install electricity. Well, what's your reaction? Well, his generation didn't grow up with electricity.
So you're saying these folks are limited?
I'm just saying it's a generational thing. Warren Buffett grew up in a world of a set of assumptions. The dollar was reigning supreme, and U.S. equities were a reasonable bet, and his worldview consists of picking a bunch of equities in the United States, and that's a totally fine worldview as long as your portfolio isn't in Argentina. If you had diversified a portfolio of the best equities in Argentina, you would have lost 100% of all your money 3 times in his career. So the point really is the world's full of people. They have a certain world that they live in. They think relative to that world, and if you think about their views make sense after 40 years or 50 years of success in that environment. I guess what I'm saying to you is when you're on the Titanic and you've been on the Titanic for your entire career and it starts sinking, you have to abandon the Titanic, right? And a lot of people just want to shuffle deck chairs on the Titanic, but that's their view. They can't imagine a different world.
So when Jamie Dimon pushes back,
I couldn't have said it better myself. If other people and even some of the smartest people on planet Earth don't get it, be happy that you do, because crypto is not only here to stay, but it is revolutionizing virtually everything, whether it's how we trade in stocks and equities, banking, asset tokenization with real world assets, just the future of finance and money generally speaking. And now the crypto market and Bitcoin in particular have issued a dire signal that is prepping virtually every other crypto and altcoin, and the ones that we mentioned in the title of this video, both XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and Dogecoin, to go on some massive rallies for new all-time highs through to the end of the year. This is not your typical May. It doesn't look like we want to look away, but instead we should likely be taking these signals and heeding them, because otherwise you might actually regret it. And what makes things even more interesting is the fact that Trump did post his next post on Truth Social will be one of the most important and impactful he has ever issued. And typically when he states something of this magnitude, it's going to move the market. That will include crypto, that will include the altcoins that I mentioned, and arguably the entire stock market. Now it seems that insiders are already preparing or know something, because large holders are continuing to add to their Bitcoin positions. In other words, any wallet holder with 1,000 to 10,000 Bitcoin are consistently adding to their bags. But I'm going to go ahead and double verify this on the actual on-chain analysis myself for this video. We'll also be looking at open interest and the liquidation maps to see what day traders think is going to happen in the upcoming days on crypto. Also, if you haven't already, head on over to Bull Runners HQ on Twitter or X and follow the steps in the pin post to enter to have a chance to win $100 worth of XRP every single week on Sunday. We announce that directly in our daily email newsletter. And all you'd have to do is go to bullrunners.com/altcoin secrets. You can find the link in the description or the bio below. Click this button to get our free book that helps you unlock the 23 secrets to becoming a crypto millionaire. And again, all you have to do is enter your email in there. And in order to enter, you follow these steps on the pinned post over at Bull Runners HQ. You like the post, you comment XRP below, and you sign up for Blowfin using this link, to which you will get a 10% deposit bonus of any amount of money up to $50,000. And also, for those of you guys who have not heard yet or haven't had a chance to check it out, go to bullrunners.com to check out Altcoin Pro University. This is your one-stop shop to becoming a crypto millionaire. And again, the reality is we provide a lot of tools, training, and resources, and we cannot guarantee that you're going to actually become a millionaire. But if you put in the right work and have the right resources and education, you have a really high likelihood of reaching whatever goal you have. We have 100 plus hours of courses and classes that you can take at your own accord, including my very own technical analysis essentials that will teach you everything you need to know to look at a chart and be confident when you do so. From altcoin picks that sometimes 2x, 5x, 10x, 50x, technical analysis, DeFi yields from our team of researchers and analysts, as well as free money we call airdrops in the world of crypto. And yes, my biggest airdrop's only ever been $6,800, but we have other community members that have made way more. But I don't really farm a ton of airdrops, and I still get airdrops all the time. $6,800 was just my biggest. My buddy Jordan got a $12,800 airdrop another time. And so yes, this is very real, and these opportunities are there all the time, and we have a team putting them together inside of this platform just for you. But here's what's even cooler. Just because this is $97 a month, we provide a weekly DeFi yield pick. In other words, this is your quick win yield pick that will help you to earn your money back or whatever you pay into this platform. So for example, if your actual membership costs $97 a month, well, right here, we are sharing one yield that is going to earn you 44.7% APY. In other words, if you toss $2,800 in, on average, this is going to be enough in this yield pool that your money is being put to work for you. You're earning interest on it. It is very low risk. Rewards, or the APY that you get, will auto compound, which means it's always going to take whatever you earn, toss it back into the protocol, and you're earning even more. So this would essentially pay for the cost of the membership. And if you don't within the first 2 weeks, go ahead and ask for a refund and your money back. No harm, no foul. But at the end of the day, we share tons of stuff just like this, and the value is truly endless among the community members that are also all paying to be here, and they share all sorts of alpha all the time. People here are very serious. That said, all you have to do to check it out is go to bullrunners.com, check out the link, and I'll see you on the other side. Now let's get into the video. So we're going to dive a bit into some recent news and things that I think are going to drive the market. Then we're going to dive into the technicals and the on-chain to really give you a better picture and understanding of that signal that was just flashed and how that's going to affect the rest of the crypto market in virtually all crypto bags. But I think it's quite interesting that Trump is prefacing this post, or at least the next post, with this post saying that it will be one of the most important and impactful he will ever make. And this truly has a lot of investors on their seats. So one thing is for sure, if it is bullish news, we can expect a lot of volatility to the upside, or better yet, a lot of buying. And yes, there are bots that are going to be buying this. They can basically predict the moment a tweet or a post is made, the second of whether it's bullish or bearish. And if it's bullish, their algorithms will go ahead and buy a bunch of stock and crypto across the board. So this is something to be paying attention to tomorrow. If it's bullish news, the markets are going to rally hard. One thing is for certain, Trump wants a bullish economy, and so I don't think he's going to try to harm it, even though in the past his tariff trade deal talks have consistently harmed the markets. I believe that was the perfect opportunity to either de-risk a little bit and sit on the sidelines if that's your shtick, or start buying the dip in a dollar cost average way. Either way, we can thoroughly expect volatility tomorrow. And because the markets have been rallying pretty strongly from their local lows and bottoms, I like to bet with the trend. Again, the trend is your friend until the bend at the end. So just be paying attention to what Trump posts. You're going to hear about it tomorrow. It's probably going to be all over the place. Some people are going to argue if it's that important or not. But when he says important and most impactful, I do believe the markets are going to be affected. In other news, we have Cointelegraph reporting that Goldman Sachs, one of the major large banks in the United States, has just boosted their IBIT, which is the BlackRock Bitcoin spot ETF holdings, by 28%, becoming the largest known holder of Bitcoin through BlackRock's ETF. Now, that's the known holders because they actually have to report. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of unknown holders that are major institutional players that are also buying Bitcoin through spot ETFs in that regulated manner, because they don't have to deal with custodying it or having all of the issues surrounding buying Bitcoin directly through an exchange. They can focus on a spot ETF. But what this is signaling from a major bank and player like Goldman Sachs is they believe that Bitcoin is going to be higher priced in the upcoming years than lower. For that reason, they are going to be adding to their bags. And this is actually going to affect the rest of the crypto market, as even Peter Brandt recently mentioned that Ethereum, although he's been relatively bearish across the board and hating, and we all have, let's be honest, Ethereum really hasn't done much of anything and it's consistently lagged the market, is now at a situation and at a major and a crucial pivot point right here above the $2,100 range to actually go for some new all-time highs up to that $6,000 mark. In other words, the bottom could actually be in for Ethereum, and because Ethereum has consistently been not only oversold but hated on, I believe it's actually one of the easiest, most asymmetric plays into the coming bull market. In other words, everyone is going to be in disbelief when Ethereum actually breaks out for a new all-time high. So we're going to go ahead and get into that chart as well. Now I'm going to share an interesting video from Franklin Templeton's Greg Scanlon, who is a venture capitalist over at that firm, and what he says about Bitcoin not having an L1 that can support an ecosystem at scale. And then how many people, especially in the XRP community, have been consistently pointing to the fact that XRP and the XRPL can perform those activities at scale. But either way, this is quite an interesting take, because then it leaves the door wide open. There is going to be a future for blockchain technologies in virtually every single scalable financial system, but which cryptocurrencies will actually provide that infrastructure? And again, one of the easiest, most notable players in the space to be able to do that will be XRP. But either way, let's have a listen.
What happens with Bitcoin as an asset? Today, it is 60% of crypto's value is Bitcoin. So what happens with in an era where you have large-scale asset tokenization takes place? What is the role of Bitcoin in that universe?
It's a great question. And I think also your point of institutions moving from an era of proof of concepts, which I think dominated from 2016 through 2019, we have moved on to that, to where today you do see commercial grade products, and Bitcoin as collateral is moving in this direction as well. And so a part of our view internally is Bitcoin has won the first product market fit of crypto, which is as an alternative to fiat stores of value. There's no doubt about this, right? It's the #1 market value. It's got the best branding in the world. What doesn't it have around it? It doesn't have an L1 that can support an ecosystem at scale, right? If you own Bitcoin, you need to have a certain amount of value that you're willing to transact in. Otherwise, it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to create that transaction or execute it. And so when we think about Bitcoin as collateral, and certainly as we have conversations with regulated institutions who now own it on behalf of clients, and those clients want the most efficient underlying asset that they can possibly own.
So what are your thoughts? Is XRP the chosen one to support real world asset tokenization at scale? Is that the next major product market fit? And so far, the crypto market seems to really like it, considering it's #4 by market cap and #3 in terms of actual cryptos that aren't a stablecoin, sitting at about a market cap of $138 billion. I do thoroughly expect in the pico top of this bull market for XRP to hit at least a $500 billion market cap, and for Ethereum to potentially even get surpassed. But a lot of money has been flowing into Ethereum this week, which means it might be a really good asymmetric play. Now, as for layer ones that have really won in this race against Ethereum, more on the DeFi side and less on the institutional side like XRP, you do have Solana, which is actually sitting at #6 and only $89 billion, just pumped up to a local high of like 180 some bucks. We're going to look at the chart here very shortly. But when it comes to product market fit for a lot of different DeFi protocols, for meme coins, for launching things, for testing and trying things, Solana seems to have won and dominated that space. And then you have Dogecoin, which is by far the largest crypto that is a meme coin that is meant to do nothing, is for nothing, yet has the attention of everyone, including Elon Musk. And again, this thing is only only sitting at a market cap of $34 billion. And if we click on this bad boy and go to the market cap over all time, you can see that its all-time high market cap was $73 billion. But I could easily see this thing hitting at least $1 this time around. And yes, the total supply is already in circulation. So this thing is really good to go and rally, especially when you look at the price action and charts. This is a product a lot of people hold. I believe a lot of people are going to continue to hold, and a lot of new investors are going to enter into as the market continues to rally to the upside. So what is that crazy signal that was just flashed? If I come over here to a weekly scale, and I'm on Bitcoin right now, you can see that we've seen an explosion of volume through this entire rally to that local high back in March of 2022 or 2024, excuse me, and also another explosion of volume into the Trump election through January 20th, his inauguration. And since that point in time, the markets really struggled, right? We're talking they saw their worst 100 days ever. And that was because of the fears and uncertainties around tariffs, how that would affect the economy, how that would raise prices. But at the end of the day, the market ate all of that up and is already back to local highs. And arguably from a weekly perspective, when you really look at this chart, it's quite insane. Bitcoin has already rallied back to those highs. So this is looking really good on diminishing volume. Typically what happens in a situation like this, and you can see it happened right here yet again, on diminishing volume, you'll see an explosion of volume into the coming weeks on a breakout. So is that going to happen? I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty confident this thing is far from done. And I will say what's even more interesting is that the MACD, for the very first time since that top in January 2020, has actually issued its very first little bull signal and crossover. This is the very first time we've seen this, going back to that actual all-time high. The last time we saw a situation like this, I'll show you, the market rallied extremely hard to a new all-time high right about here. You can see that the market came back to its prior all-time high and then exploded for a very large move to the upside. So it's very much possible that this one little signal is issuing a dire warning for people, and if they do not enter the crypto market soon, they will regret it because they will be sitting on the sidelines. So yes, I've actually already told all of our community members that I was adding to my position at $88,000 on a breakout. And you can see that step by step, I showed people exactly why I believe we are officially now in a potential market recovery and in a situation where I will be buying Bitcoin. In other words, I wanted to see a break above 89.2. Guess what happened? That did happen. We did not get a close below that the next day. In other words, we saw strong follow through. My actual bull market zone would be above $95,000, and I was going to be adding to all of my crypto positions in that time frame. I even shared a video and this post, which was directly and only available for our Altcoin Pro University members. So all sorts of stuff in value like this would have actually helped you to earn a boatload of even just income on Bitcoin alone, but not including all of the other altcoins that have already followed, as we are already up tremendously from that breakout of 88.6 to 89.2, about 18.4% on Bitcoin alone. And guess what? If you play with a little bit of leverage, this would have been a huge play. But either way, I'm on the channel right now telling you that yes, we are officially at not only a major pivot point on this signal right here, but also a major pivot point on Bitcoin and the entire crypto market right here at about $105,000. So let me go ahead and put a line right there. And as you can see, back to those prior all-time highs, we've had a few weeks where it came back into that range right above, only to get broken back down. And so right now on a breakout, I would like to see some volume. MACD is signaling something good, and arguably even just declining volume through this entire range with a new trend to the upside for a series of higher and higher highs and higher lows is massive. This leads me to believe that something like Ethereum is actually going to start to do very well, as again, we already broke above what I thought would be a potential resistance right here. Let me go ahead and grab this tool between the range of about 2,500 down to 2,278. And as you can see in the past, it's acted as a pretty strong support that then became a resistance on that Trump news and Trump pump right here on March 3rd. That said, we are already back into the range. We've seen some insane rallies on expanding or increasing volume. And so, yes, I think this is actually one of the most easy and asymmetric plays you could do, especially considering the fact that Ethereum has failed to break out above its prior range resistances coming all the way back into May. So if we actually did, I'm not going to say that this is a cup and handle because I believe this retrace is a little too deep, but this would be an ascending triangle or a wedge that is very long term that could take us for a breakout to at least $6,000. So I think all eyes should be on something like Ethereum right now, not because it is the best crypto in the space, but because I do believe a lot of institutional investors are going to have an appetite for it, and already that's showing up right here. This thing was hanging out in a range for quite a while, has consistently been lagging the market, and is now potentially even in position to not only lead the market into a breakout over to here, but even just follow Bitcoin. So yes, Ethereum to me, it looks like it's good to go, good to buy. I would be adding to my positions right, and let me go ahead and get into that chart right there on a daily time frame. Let's go here. I'd be looking to add to my position anywhere from 2,500 down to 22.5. Anywhere in this range looks like a good buy for something like Ethereum. Now, XRP held up a heck of a lot stronger than Ethereum. As you can see, Ethereum broke down from all-time highs, never put in a new all-time high, whereas XRP did, but it actually broke down pretty hard, whereas XRP, on the other hand, has consistently been supported at that $2.05 range down to the $1.95 range. So anything above there is bull zone. Now here's where things get really interesting. We did have a descending wedge that I've been talking about over and over and over again, and I wanted to wait for a breakout. And since that point in time, I did tell people to start taking some positions here. And as you can see here, we've not only broke above the descending wedge right here, but now we were supported and we're putting in some new higher highs and higher lows. This is a textbook uptrend. So a break above 255 should easily take us to $3, which would be my first target. And by the way, that's not my only target, and I'll go ahead and drag it to right here. My next target would be that major all-time high. Now, in a situation or a scenario where we have a real bull market situation, guess what? This thing is going for new all-time highs because it's already showed really strong relative strength. So yes, right now it's kind of lagging Bitcoin. It's not performing as strongly, but when Bitcoin cools off, a lot of that money might rotate into something like XRP and maybe even just one news event like a spot ETF will pump this thing easily to the $3 range and again to the $3.40 range. When we touch these ranges and see the price action there, then I believe it'll be easier for us to tell whether this thing's ready to pump for new all-time highs or whether we'll see a little bit of resistance and come back down into a range like $2.80 to $3 for a support before the next leg up. I really don't know because I'm not a future teller, but what's interesting is volume has since severely declined since those all-time highs, and now we're putting in a new uptrend very similar to Bitcoin. This leads me to believe that we're going to come right back up to that prior all-time high, kind of like Bitcoin. And just the fact that, look at this, we're holding this range so strongly, it just doesn't seem like there's any more appetite for serious sell pressure, especially if everything in the bull market continues like with Bitcoin. Now let's move on to something like Dogecoin, and then we'll get into the charts on the actual futures traders and on-chain analytics. Dogecoin is quite interesting because when I'm looking at a weekly time frame, you can see that this thing in a few weeks rallies really hard and actually makes the majority of its gains. Then it cools off for quite some time and usually takes longer to dump than it does to pump. In certain situations, or I would even argue most situations with cryptos and traditional stocks, it's the other way around. Usually it takes a long time to rally and pump, and then it dumps in a very short period of time. But it's not that way with Dogecoin. And right now you can see that we are consistently being supported right at this trend line from a weekly time frame, going all the way back to October of 2023. We also have a crazy amount of support in the ranges below 8 cents. So even if we saw, let's say, a bear market situation, or for whatever reason the entire crypto market sells off like crazy, okay, at the end of the day you have so much support and so little risk below that 10-cent range, but now we've already seen support and we're starting to put in a new uptrend on Dogecoin. And so this thing is looking really, really good. And I would say that right now we are being supported perfectly at what used to be a resistance once and twice is now becoming a support in a perfect trendline touch situation, with both the EMAs turning to the upside on a daily time frame. You can see that we had a bearish trend all the way through this range here, and now the blue line has crossed over the orange line, or the 10 EMA has crossed over the 20 EMA and has flipped bullish for the very first time starting on April 22nd. The problem was the whole crypto market wasn't ready yet, but now that the whole crypto market has turned around, I do believe Dogecoin is going to be a serious runner and break for some new local highs above that 48-cent range, arguably up to at least the prior all-time high, which I don't know if it's on this chart right now, but right here, if you zoom out, you can see that the actual all-time high was about 74 cents. So I could see something like Dogecoin easily popping straight through that prior all-time high, considering this is a longer term uptrend, and just the fact that if the appetite is there and a lot of ETFs are flowing and things are looking good at an economic level, and Trump continues to pump the markets through another tweet, yes, this thing could easily hit $1. I think that would be a major psychological resistance though, and I likely would be taking profits on Dogecoin then. Either way, you stand to gain a lot of money on a play like Dogecoin, currently sitting at 24 cents all the way up to $1. That is almost a 339% gain and would be the equivalent of XRP pumping up to about $10. But on something like Dogecoin, it requires far less money for something like it to hit $10 than it would for XRP. XRP is going to require a lot more money because it's a far larger market now. In other words, I believe this is a pretty easy and asymmetric play alongside Ethereum now. And finally, we have Solana, arguably the best layer one in the space, definitely leagues ahead of Ethereum, but Ethereum has far more institutional adoption, and they're just entrenched in a way that Solana isn't. Still, I don't see a situation or a circumstance in which Solana doesn't at least hit $500 to $1,000 in the future. Now, it might not happen this bull run. It could happen next bull run. Again, I like to remain agnostic and not predict too far into the future because it's impossible. I don't think about time frames. I actually think about price targets. I think that's a better way to think. But generally speaking, Solana did hold its support with a bear trap right here on April. In other words, a buy at $100 was a really good time to buy on something like Solana after it dumped on the Trump crypto ball at $295, where they launched the Trump token on Solana, which made this thing rally like crazy. That sell-off also was extremely nasty, created this bear trap, but now we're being supported and back into healthy ranges. We do have a lot of volume trading here. As you can see, the VRVP, the resistance was at about 150 to 140. So this range right here is a pretty strong range that Solana not only basically squatted at, but broke out above and then touched the 177 to 180 range. But it would remain to be seen whether or not we can actually break above the 190 range, as that is a pretty strong resistance just from a price action perspective. Still, when I look at the EMAs, things are looking pretty bullish, and we're actually touching exactly that 20 EMA perfectly for a support before the next move up. So if this thing comes back down to, so let's say that 10 EMA at 160 or the 20 EMA at 150, I think 150 would be a great range to buy something like Solana into at least the 190 range. But again, you know, it's an interesting situation because this thing, if it does break down below $100, has a long way to go down. I don't see that happening in a situation where the entire market is rallying and in a bull trend, but generally speaking, this is not good that Solana would touch this range one more time. So I do not want to see Solana touching 125 yet again, because then yes, it's likely to break down and break down hard because there's just so much room here. Still, it's nice to see that Solana, when it does rally, it rallies really hard, and again is in a now a perfect textbook intermediate term uptrend in a longer term uptrend. If this is our low right here, if I could grab that tool, then this is our next high, this is our next low and high, right? All of these lows are higher than each other. This high is higher than this high, and we broke above what was our prior range high for a resistance, and we're supported there, as you can see perfectly, with loads of volume to trade at it. So everything looks good from a technical perspective on Solana. And again, I would be a buyer somewhere in the 160 to 150 range. I wouldn't buy right now, and I would buy and hold it at least to the 193 and see how it reacts there, considering this is now a resistance. It was a resistance back here, and it was a support here. It might likely be a resistance yet again. And as you can see, we are now hopping over to crypto quants to actually look at whether or not some major players are consistently ripping Bitcoin off exchanges to hold or self-custody it on cold storage wallets. And so far, this trend has been one of the craziest trends that I've ever experienced in crypto. And again, it's important to remember, I've been around a long time in the crypto world, going back to early 2016, before it even hit, I believe, $500. I have to double check on the chart, but it was like April 2016 when I actually started investing in crypto. And so I've never seen a situation where this much Bitcoin has consistently been ripped off exchanges. This type of institutional demand will drive the price up, simply because if more demand either enters or even remains the same with such a low supply available to buy, as every single Bitcoin mined by miners doesn't actually have to be sold, but if they sell it, it's still being bought up and then some, will drive the price higher and higher and higher. So with something like this happening to Bitcoin, I actually expect the crypto market to rally to new all-time highs very soon. And with all of the signals that we just watched and witnessed, things are likely going to get crazier than you ever expected before. Now, what's interesting is I was also looking at the liquidation maps over on CoinGlass. All you have to do is come to CoinGlass, go to liquidation map, and right over here across the board, by the way, this is the case with over every single crypto that I've looked at. They're all bullish. If I come over to Bitcoin and I go to the 7-day chart, I turn off Binance, OKX, Bybit, just so I can see how much cumulative leverage there is in the system. You can see that on the 7-day period, the majority of people are leveraged long to the tune of $13.23 billion, whereas there are far less shorts, about only $4 billion. In other words, right now the bulls are in control. And if the price of Bitcoin actually hit $93,000, $13 billion would be liquidated. What's interesting is I could do the same thing for something like XRP. You can see that we have a lot more long leverage. Again, let me just get rid of these so it's easier to see. Far more long leverage than we do short leverage. So again, important to pay attention. If you consistently see this on the 7-day time frame, I know a lot of people want to bet against the herd, but I've found that you want to bet with the herd when it comes to these shorter periods of time. So even in the short run, I do expect us to rally through the start of the week into next week. Anywho, that is all for the video, folks. We're sitting bullish right now. Doesn't mean that you have to go and toss your entire portfolio at the market. It's just a thought. I'm just giving you information. Do what you will with your portfolio. Thanks so much for watching. If you learned something, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and also check out bullrunners.com for Altcoin Pro University, your one-stop shop to getting all the value you simply do not get on this channel because we could not cover it. These videos would be just far too long. And every Tuesday I do a technical analysis class live where you can ask questions and I can teach you how to think and approach markets and charts. Again, we rush through these charts on these videos, not because I don't want to teach you, but because it's not the proper environment and setting for training on every little detail and thing. This is stuff that I can actually do on calls with students. So thanks so much. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, my friend. Head to bullrunners.com and I'll see you next time.